notion of the tripods being buried in pods underground was Stephen's, and I think that when you're working in a genre that's been well explored for decades, you just don't want to do what everybody else has done. And I think he just probably was thinking, well, they always come from space, so he just said, well, what if I go the other way? What if they come from underground? And then you work with it from there. A lot of times, a lot of your thinking starts with, what if I go the other way?
I want to show you this interesting thing.
Well, Stephen definitely had a few things in mind when he came to me with the brief, and it was, the 3 legs, definitely, that it has to be a tripod, and it has to be able to do certain things. There were certain things in the script, and most importantly, first, was to look scary.
Well, I wanted the tripods, number one, to be really scary, because they're going to represent what's driving them. And so I wanted the tripods themselves, I want the audience to say, okay, it's just a machine, let's get to what's inside, let's see the aliens. I wanted the audience to actually be terrified by what these things look like from the outside. So I had the most amazing group of computer graphic artists working on the design of the tripods.
Then we went back and researched all of the wealth of design interpretations that have been done to date. And part of it was to be conscious of what had been done, but also to steer away from that because we wanted to create something new and unique. And one of the great things that Stephen wanted to do was to create something that was iconic, but yet still paid homage and tribute to the original story. And so the whole idea of 3-legged was wonderful because then you had to start thinking about, well, why did they make it 3-legged? And so we had to think about different biology, different physiology of why they would perhaps make it like that, because obviously for us, we're sort of bipeds and quadrupeds. And then once you kind of do that homework, then it's really a matter of designing something aesthetically pleasing that looks and addresses sort of what the story needs are. And so in some ways, working closely with ILM, we would do some design, they would do some designs, it would dovetail together. Stephen would basically give us feedback on what works and what doesn't, and then we'd go back and we'd do our own interpretation, and it just kept going and being refined.
The original ideas that we had discussed about was that the tripods were pretty much mechanical, and they are mechanical. They're not a living thing at all. But as we got into it, started animating them and looking at them, they become a little more lifelike in their movements.
I remember seeing the designs of the tripod and going, wow, it looks like a Sherman tank atop these long, spindly, flowing legs, and picturing it in movement, these legs in a graceful flow, it's almost like watching a giraffe, and you're not realizing how much ground it's actually covering because you're hypnotized by this wonderful motion. And then contrast that with, it could be lethal at the drop of a hat, with the tentacles and everything. So I thought it was a wonderful character in that sense.
The lights coming off of it, the size certainly was all from the book, and we just took it there as a starting point and really made it able to act and react with its environment and with the human actors, basically.
The tripods had 3 legs, and so 3s are a guideline for how we were designing most of the things. So there were like 3 eyes, 3 limbs, 3 fingers, and the aliens, of course, were 3-limbed, or just some odd, configuration. And it really made it compelling because just the fact that you have 3 legs dictated a different kind of movement and a different kind of form. So the tripods in themselves, I think, will become very iconic in terms of what the aliens are. Just the fact that there are 3 symbolizes the difference between our culture and theirs.
It has a kind of terrestrial buoyancy in the sense that it is walking on the earth and there are laws of gravity, but yet it has this kind of flow to it that is essentially aquatic. And there's a lot of aquatic characteristics of the tripod, such as it's almost like a jellyfish atop, the long legs underneath. It has the tentacles of like a squid or an octopus. So all these things, again, it's on the land, but it has aquatic characteristics.
Stephen kept saying these things move like really scary ballet dancers. So interesting, like you don't normally think of a monster moving like a ballet dancer, and that dichotomy gave me something to push off of and kind of, shape the way the design went.
What we did is we took the animatic model and we started doing some development. This is sort of putting the tripod through its paces, deciding what the range of motion would be, and really finding sort of the bookends for what Stephen was looking for. And you can see on the legs, we really had to decide how bendy they would be, what started to look almost too animated and not heavy enough. The next step is then to rig the character. And what you see here is all of these colored controllers. The animators will move over time to animate.
The animation on this is pretty important to give a sense of sort of amazement and danger and humbleness to these creatures. Like there's nothing you could do. They're in control. You know, that's pretty neat that comes across in the film, and Randy's been really good at getting that in the animation and all.
Yeah, this is actually the walk that Stephen really liked. He felt that there was a sense of weight and heaviness to this, and also a nice organic sort of fluid motion to it. We did go a little more towards creature-like look.
You know, the birds, that was an idea that I heard from Stephen, which I thought was wonderful, that there was, you know, that all these birds kind of were following these war machines because they symbolized death and they were creating death. And so these black birds were almost like vultures, scavengers, and so they foreshadowed the images of death. And I thought it was a wonderful way of doing all of that, but yet still getting a sense of drama, because you don't know if these birds are going to the danger or away from danger and whether you should follow or run away. And it was just great because in an image, it sort of strikes fear in you without really knowing why, but you're reacting to it.
Look at the goddamn birds!
War machines actually die in the movie is one of those iconic images that I grew up with. You know, I love seeing those things. And I think it's one of those wonderful images because it reinforces that you don't have to change our reality much to make it fantastic. And by introducing these gigantic war machines half crashed into a building, kind of automatically gives you a very stunning icon. And so, you know, there are many ways to do it. And of course, you know, I think it's always best to go with the simplest, which is to have the machine there and then just, you know, treat it with real careful lighting, real careful staging. So it becomes a very surreal moment where you're seeing this very horrific thing, but yet it was an image that gave hope, hope for humanity.